What is up, everybody? We're back here at King Film Sports for the first Bracketology update here in college basketball. Just under 6 weeks until we reach the Ncaa tournament selection Sunday, and just under 5 weeks until we really get into major conference tournament play here. So we will get into the update surrounding the bubble, as it is February 3rd right now, teams that are looking in and looking out. As it stands, this bracket is by Jerry Palm of CBS Sports. You've also got ESPN Joe Lunardi, so we will go over some of his brackets in the future when he does have an up-to-date bracket, but he has not updated his in a couple days. So Jerry Palm with the most updated bracket here. And we started out looking at the bubble, and we see the last four in here. You've got Georgia, Wake Forest, Pitt, and BYU. Georgia, of course, a part of the spectacular SEC, but they have had horrible form as of late. Very tough schedule. I think they've lost 4 of 5 or maybe 5 of 6. Tough loss for them at Bama by 20 plus points this past week. They got close a couple weeks ago with Auburn at home, but could not secure that one. Got right against South Carolina midweek last week. But yes, easier schedule coming up for them, and they will have to rack up some wins. Only 7 losses, though, and as you can see, a great net ranking at 34. Then you've got Wake Forest, who have the horrible net ranking here, but have actually made some strides here in a horrible ACC. They were able to knock off this Pitt team that you see there at home by a couple of points. Then you've got Pitt, much better net ranking for them, but tough loss at Wake Forest, and they actually play today against Virginia, so we will see there. But again, poor ACC this year, so they're really going to have to win some of these games against the lesser competition. And then you've got BYU sitting at only 6 losses here in the last 4 in a relatively tough Big 12. They have been racking up a few wins. I think they've won 4 in a row here, one against Baylor last week, and then big win against UCF here on the road in Orlando. And as you can see in the first 4 out, you've got UCF here at 13-8. 64 in the net ranking, so not great analytically there. Then you have SMU, who racked up a couple wins, but again, pretty bad strength of schedule there in the ACC. Only 5 losses, though, that will work to their advantage. Got to string along some of these victories. Then you have a horrible Indiana team at this point. I think they've lost 4 or 5 in a row in Big Ten play here. Was really close on Friday night against Purdue, and then I think the game before that against Maryland was pretty close, but actually the last win that they had was against USC, I think 3 or 4 weeks ago. And then you see this USC team finally in the first 4 out graphic, a horrid non-con and then start of the conference play schedule, but starting to get it right here with a couple of big wins, notably over the weekend against Michigan State there. So we will monitor them in a tough Big Ten, surging, and Indiana trending downward right now. But as it stands with those last 4 in teams, I would take Georgia over Wake Forest in that matchup, and then I would take BYU narrowly over Pittsburgh there, although I think that would be a very close game. So with that being said, let's go through the bracket, and I will be giving you guys all my thoughts on all of these teams and my prediction for how I think the bracket will unfold here. So we started out in the southern region, and we have the standout Auburn Tigers with only 1 loss throughout all of the regular season. That was, of course, on the road at Duke, but some great wins, and I will take them to advance against whichever 16 seed they play there. I think they easily win that matchup in that one. Then St. John's versus St. Mary's, the religious battle here between the New York City and Bay Area teams. And these are 2 teams that I really like so far this season, and I think that they will improve upon their seeding in the 8 and 9 lines respectively. Kadary Richmond, the St. John's standout, I think he's been playing great. So I expect St. John's, although they've been racking up some wins against subpar Big East competition, I expect them to improve upon their seeding. And likewise for St. Mary's, who had a tough non-con and then have really been getting it going into the WCC, undefeated in league play and a big win at home against Gonzaga there. But unfortunately for the Gales, I will take St. John's to win this matchup here. I think they are the superior team in terms of talent there. Then you get to Ole Miss and George Mason. Ole Miss has had a rough go of things lately. They look to be a top 3 or 4 seed, but a few losses in a row here. They did play close with Auburn at home. That was a great spot for them, but unfortunately lost that one there. Had a couple losses before that in SEC play as well, but I do think that they would be able to top this George Mason team. Padula would have to have a pretty good tournament there, and they're going to have to increase some depth if they want to go on a run here. Then you've got Wisconsin versus Arkansas State. Wisconsin been playing some great basketball in the Big Ten lately, so I would take them to advance there. Then you get UCLA versus Drake. I know that Drake has been pretty good, especially in the mid-major ranks this season in their non-con and then going into the league schedule, but I do think that this UCLA team is peaking right now, starting to pick up form. Mick Cronin was obviously frustrated with his guys earlier, but I do think that the Bruins are playing great basketball, so give me them to win that one there. And then Houston, tough go of things lately for them, especially within that Big 12. Tough loss against Texas Tech at home, but I do think that they win here. Also odd that they're pushed down to the 3 line. I mean, this is a team that we were expecting to be on the 1 line for most of the season, so I think they should at least be the 2, especially over that Marquette team, but we will get to that when we get there. Then Louisville versus Texas. I know that the Cardinals have been getting a few wins in the down ACC, but I expect this Texas team to win this matchup. I think that they are more talented at this point in terms of all the analytics. Just gone through a tougher strength of schedule here, so I do say Texas wins in a slight upset in that one, and then give me Marquette to beat UNC Asheville in the 15-2 matchup. So then we advance to the second round, where we've got Auburn versus St. John's. St. John's in the out-of-conference didn't get many huge wins against the likes of these top 10 caliber competition. They'd have to pull off a big one against Auburn. I'm still looking forward to Auburn going on the road to the really tough places in the SEC, such as Florida, Tennessee, or Alabama, or Kentucky, anything like that. I know they have some big wins at home and some wins against lesser teams on the road, but I do not think that St. John's would be able to match up with them here. So give me Auburn to win that one by double digits there. Then we get to an interesting one between Ole Miss and Wisconsin here. A couple weeks ago, I might have said that this Ole Miss team would win this one, but Wisconsin been shooting the lights out as of late. So give me them to win an offensive barrage against this Ole Miss team and Chris Beard there. Then we get to UCLA in Houston. I think this would be a great matchup if those two faced off, but give me Houston. I just think that they'd be able to choke off the UCLA offense there, make it a bit of a rock fight and win that one, rebound to get to the Sweet 16. Then we take Texas and Marquette. I would take Marquette here. I'm not bullish on their chances. I know that Cam Jones has been struggling for them and overall struggling to replace Tyler Kolek from last year. I know that they've been great on defense here, but I do think that they will start to slip up as conference play continues here. Tough loss for them over the weekend against UConn. Then we get to the Sweet 16 where we've got Auburn and Wisconsin. I think that this one's pretty easy. Give me the Auburn Tigers to roll on there to the Elite Eight. I think that Janai Broom and company would have a great game there, and then Bruce Pearl's guys would advance. And then we get to Houston Marquette. As I've been alluding to, I think that this Marquette team a little bit overrated on that 2 line. I know that Houston has not been playing great as of late, but I think that Sampson, their head coach, is better than Shock Smart at this point. I think their personnel is better, and I think that they would advance there. LJ Cryer, a big game against that Marquette team. And that brings us to the Elite Eight, where we've got Auburn and Houston, a heavyweight tilt here. And I do believe that these two teams faced off in the non-con. In Houston, Auburn got away with a 5-point victory in that one. I expect similar things in this one. I think that Auburn is the more talented, the better team. They can win in a rock fight. They can win in a shootout here. I just think that they are superior to Houston. But of all the teams within this region right now, I definitely think that Houston would have the best shot to knock them off if Auburn's not knocking down some of their shots or Chad Baker-Mazara gets into some of the shenanigans there. But I do think that this Auburn team will advance to the Final Four there. I know very chalk, but still I do think that the Tigers are the best team in college basketball at this point. That brings us to the Duke Regional here. The East Regional, give me the Blue Devils to easily advance against the 16 seed, whoever they play. Then we get to Maryland and Baylor. I think this one is a very intriguing matchup here. Baylor, not great in a non-con, but been racking up some wins. Big win on Saturday at home against KU. But ultimately, I think that this Maryland team, very dangerous here, especially with Derek Queen and Rice hitting some of those threes on the outside. So I do think that this young Maryland team has been mounting things up very well in a tough Big Ten. So give me them to advance to the second round there. Then we get to Oregon and BYU, and I'm struggling to see how this Oregon team is getting this number 5 ranking. I know that they were slated as a number 4 seed earlier this year, but I think that they've been a little bit fraudulent in this Big Ten, getting a few close victories and then some big blowouts going against them, notably a few days ago with that UCLA loss. So I do think that this BYU team matches up very well, and analytically they are a much better team than a 12 seed. Going through the first 4 here, I know things will be tough, but I do think that they are better than Oregon at this point, even with the seeding disparity there. So give me the Cougars to advance. Then we get to Missouri and Akron. Not huge on this Missouri team, and I know that the SEC has been dominant. Missouri's been getting some wins within this SEC, but I'm not seeing them as a top 4 seed, especially as we get further into SEC play. I see some regression looming for them there. So I do think that they beat Akron, but I do not think that they'll be going far in the tournament as of this point from what I've seen. Then we get to Arizona and Georgia. Arizona obviously got all of the talent that you would want. We're top 5 earlier this season. Then we're unranked. And now with a couple of big wins against ISU with that crazy Caleb Love buzzer beater to send it to overtime, and then the ASU win over the weekend, they are trending upwards. So even against this Georgia team, I think that their talent is superior in that one. So give me them to win. Then you've got Michigan State. I think a bit fraudulent here. I think that this 3 seed serves them about right. They were flying a little too high there with the undefeated regular season in Big Ten play before that USC loss. So I do think that they beat Jack State there, but do not see them going on a big run. Then you've got Creighton versus Vanderbilt here. I know that Vandy has had a few frisky moments in the SEC so far this season, notably that big win against Tennessee, but I do think that this Creighton team just overall better. No Trey Alexander this year, but I do think that same core from last year have been performing decent in Big East play, got unlucky in a few spots there as well, so I do think that the Blue Jays would advance there, and then I think Florida easily beats Norfolk State on the bottom. Then you get to Duke, Maryland. I think that this would be a pretty easy Duke victory unless Maryland is hitting their shots, and I do think that Maryland could improve over the course of the regular season. You could see this team, if they continue this form, being a 6 or a 7 seed come this time, but tough to play this Duke team with Cooper Flagg and company here as they continue to ascend and improve there. Only 2 losses on the regular season at this point, so I can't pick the Blue Devils not to get to the Sweet 16 there. Then, as I was alluding to earlier, I think that this Missouri team, a bit fraudulent, a bit overrated, and I have BYU going on a little bit of a Cinderella run here, advancing to the Sweet 16 from that first 4 positioning there, so give me them to advance in that one. I like their talent there. Then we get to Arizona and Michigan State. I do actually think that Arizona would be favored in this matchup on a neutral court against this Michigan State team. No guarantee that they win that, but I do think that they are the better team at this point and playing much better under Tommy Lloyd. So give me this Arizona team to advance there. I think that they win in a shootout over Michigan State. And then I think would be a tough game for this Florida team, even though they're the 2 seed. Creighton, a lot of experience, that veteran starting lineup, but I do think that this Florida team, a bit more explosivity and hunkering down on defense, definitely good at that. Tough loss for them over the weekend against Tennessee. That was really just a snake pit they were going into with the revenge-minded Vols. So give me this Florida team to bounce back. I think that they would win that one there. That would bring us to a Duke-BYU Sweet 16. I think that would be academic at that point. I think that Duke would win easily just by their talent alone in that one by about 10 to 15 points. And then you get to Arizona and Florida. I think that would be a great matchup. I just think that Florida's defense is slightly better there. 2 analytics darlings at this point, but I do think that Florida would advance in that one. And then you get to Duke, Florida in the Elite Eight. Would be a great matchup, but I do think that Duke's talent would reign supreme in that one. So give me the Blue Devils to advance to the Final Four. So some chalk up top with the Southern and Eastern regionals, and we will mix it up here in the West and Midwest as we come down. So we started out with Tennessee and Bryant. Tennessee getting the nod at the number 1 spot. I'm not sure I was expecting this. Yes, a great win to get some revenge against Florida on their home court, but 3 SEC teams getting number 1 seeds. I know that it's been the dominant conference, but I do not think that they will get 3 in. I think that it'll be Auburn and one of these 2, Tennessee and Bama, once we get to Selection Sunday, as I think one of those teams will hit some regression there and drop down to at least the number 2 line. But regardless, give me Tennessee to beat Bryant there. Then we get to UConn and New Mexico. Tough matchup for New Mexico here. I know that UConn's been struggling, but I just trust Danny Hurley and the boys to get one done there. I also expect them to bounce back somewhat in this regular season, get some big wins in the Big East there. Then you get Texas Tech and Samford. I think that this Tech team goes on a run here, so I'm going to predict them to win that one easily there. And then to spruce things up a bit here, I think that this Memphis team riding a little too high with these American performances. I know that they've been getting a lot of wins here, but I'm not overly impressed by this team. So I do think that Yale gets the upset. I think that whoever wins the Ivy League, whether it be Princeton, Cornell, or Yale, will be very frisky in the tournament. Obviously, we've seen the last 2 years with the upsets that they've had. So give me Yale to win this one to inject some craziness into this bracket. Then we get to Mississippi State and Ohio State. I don't know what's gone on with the Bulldogs of Mississippi State, and Ohio State has been red hot other than that tough loss that they took in Illinois yesterday. So give me this Buckeyes team to continue their ways under Jake Diebler. Mississippi State just tough run of form lately. I think they've lost 3 or 4 in a row there. Then you get to Iowa State. I think they easily win that one, bounce back after a couple tough losses. We'll see what happens tonight against Kansas. That is a big game looming for them there. Then we get to Clemson and San Diego State. SDSU, obviously some great wins throughout this season, especially in the non-con there, but I just think this Clemson team a little bit more consistent. I think that would be a great game between those 2. Very entertaining defensive matchup. But give me the Tigers to roll on, and then I'll take TAMU to easily beat Florida Gulf Coast there. Then we get to the second round. I definitely think that UConn is live to take on and take down this Vols team, who are known for choking in the tournament under Rick Barnes, but I will take the Vols to advance there. I just think that this UConn team has left a little too much out there this season. Really no great perimeter talent on offense, in my opinion, and no great consistency there. So I think that they'd be locked down by the Vols. Then we get to Texas Tech. I think that they'd easily beat that Yale Bulldog team there. And then Ohio State, Iowa State. I just think that Iowa State's defense there would reign supreme, and especially once they get Momcilovic back. And I also think that Lipsy would go off in that matchup there. Then getting to Texas A&M, I think that they would beat Clemson pretty easily there. We will monitor Texas A&M, though, in their 3-point shooting. I think that they could regress a little bit and fall below this 2 line, but I definitely think that they're superior to Clemson there. Then we get to Tennessee and Texas Tech. This is where I will have a bit of an upset here, as I see this Texas Tech team being very dangerous, especially within Big 12 play. I think that they'll be much higher than this number 5 seed come the tournament. I think they'll probably be a 2 or a 3 if they go on the run that I'm predicting. So I do think that they will take down this Vols team, who have been struggling for offense at some of the points this season, and they can really win in a rock fight or shootout there. So give me the Red Raiders to advance the Elite Eight. And I think that we will have an all Big 12 Elite Eight here, as I do think that Iowa State rebounds. I think that they beat Texas A&M here as Texas A&M. I just don't think they've shown enough to me here. A couple fraudulent wins in the SEC, notably at Ole Miss this regular season. I think that's been propping them up. So give me the Iowa State Cyclones. I just think that the analytics love their defense and their 3-point shooting. Lipsy and co will advance to the Elite Eight. Where I think they lose to this Texas Tech team, that would be a very interesting matchup here. But I do think that this Red Raiders team are poised to go on a run, as you saw a great win in Houston over the weekend there. So I will take the Red Raiders to advance to the Final Four. And that brings us to our final regional here. It's the Alabama regional. The Crimson Tide have been rolling as of late. I will take them easily to beat Southern in the first round. Then we have an interesting matchup between West Virginia and Utah State. I think that these 2 teams are a bit inferior of the other 8-9 teams that we've gone throughout this bracket. I will take Utah State. They were in this exact position in the tournament last year and ended up beating TCU in that matchup. WVU, great wins this season, but have also been very inconsistent off their home floor there. So I do think that the consistency of Utah State will reign supreme. Then we get to Illinois McNeese. Always a volatile game when you're playing McNeese, but I do think that this Illinois team, Yaka Jonas playing great ball, and Brad Underwood just needs to get these guys to be more consistent here. But I do think that this Illini team ceiling is very high. And then you get to Kansas and Grand Canyon, and I know that a lot lot of people won't be ready for this, but give me the Antelopes to advance. I just think that this Kansas team has been so underwhelming this season. You go from that Houston game, 6-point leads in the end of regulation and the end of the first overtime, and not being able to close those ones out after playing a spectacular game against that tough Houston team, not being able to wrap those ones up. So I just think that this GCU team, with all the talent that they're bringing back from last year and all the tournament experience from those close games that they played, I think that they will have Kansas' number here. I think that Kansas is live for an upset, and GCU is not a team that they would want to play here. So just kind of funky how the bracket played out, but I do think that this GCU team is very live there, so giving them to win in an upset. Then we get to Michigan, UC Irvine. Definitely think that UC Irvine from the Big West is live for an upset as well, but I do think that this Michigan team kind of upset-proof because of the big man play that they have with Golden and Danny Wolf there. So I do love the basketball that they've been playing in spite of a couple down results there in the Big Ten. So give me Michigan to advance. And then I think Kentucky easily discards Northern Colorado there. Then we get to Oklahoma and Gonzaga. This one's very interesting here because this Gonzaga team, their analytics say that they're a top 10 or a top 15 team, but might actually be struggling to make the tournament, especially if they get upset a couple more times in WCC play. So we will monitor that there. But just according to all the underlying metrics, I got to trust that this Gonzaga team will right the ship at some point under Mark Few, so give me them to advance there, and then I'll take Purdue to advance as well. Then we get to the second round. I take Alabama to easily shoot the lights out over this Utah State team, so give me them to advance there. And then I think Illinois, with their talent, discards of Grand Canyon in the second round. Then Michigan, Kentucky. I was going back and forth on this matchup, but I do think that the Michigan big men will have a lot to say in this one. I just think that the Kentucky perimeter talent would not be able to do enough. Really exciting game between those two if that were to take place, but I would narrowly take Michigan in that matchup. And then we've got Purdue Gonzaga, obviously took place last year in the tournament. Edey dominated. Not going to be a similar game in that one. I definitely think that Gonzaga's shooting could give them the win in this one, but I do think that Purdue slightly superior, just more consistent at this point, so give me them to advance to the Sweet 16. Then we get to Alabama and Illinois. I know that Illinois always chokes in the tournament here, but I just really don't trust this Alabama team. I haven't seen it enough within conference play yet for this team, so I will take the Illini. I love their ceiling there. I love the experience that they're getting for these younger players on this team, Boswell, the veteran, as well. So I do think the Illini will advance to the Elite Eight there. Just so much variance that this Crimson Tide team plays with. If Mark Sears isn't rolling, then I think it's pretty tough for them to get the offense going in that one. And their defense, always a bit of concern there. So I do think they are liable for an upset there in the Sweet 16. Then we get to Michigan and Purdue. I was actually thinking of taking Michigan in that matchup, but then I remember a couple weeks ago when we saw these two teams play in West Lafayette, and Purdue easily won that one by 30-plus points in that one. So just can't pick against Purdue in this matchup because of that. And then we get to the Big Ten Elite Eight matchup, and in this one, I will take the Illini to advance there. I just think that at this point, they'd have the talent rolling and just be unstoppable against this Purdue team, especially with some better defense there, but could go either way between those two teams. And that would bring us to the Final Four, where we'd have Illinois versus Duke. I definitely think that Duke has the advantage in that one, would take them to win. And then Texas Tech versus Auburn, that would be a very interesting matchup, but just can't predict anything against Auburn at this point. So that would bring us to the Auburn-Duke final that everyone's been waiting for. Obviously, those two teams played earlier, and the consensus was that both were the two best teams in the nation, but Duke was able to win on their home floor. But I do think that this Auburn team would be looking for some revenge here. Clearly the best team in college basketball, according to myself, so I would take the Auburn Tigers to win the national championship there. So with that being said, let me know what you guys think in the comments down below of my bracket predictions of this bracket matrix right now. What do you guys think of the bubble? What do you guys think of the SEC domination? What do you guys think of the different seeding lines? Do you agree with the SEC getting 3 or 4 right now? Big 12 being kind of slumped down at this point? Let me know in the comments down below. As always, be sure to like and subscribe, and I'll see you all in the next one.